I'm ready, so whenever you want to start letting people in, go ahead from my end. And then actually before you do that, uh when let's see. Cool. We got people joining. Hi everybody. Thanks for joining and being punctual. We will give folks a few minutes to trickle in and then I will get us started. All right, everyone, I'm going to give us a couple more minutes here as folks are still trickling in. As you can see, the Slido is up here. Wanted to give everyone lots of time to capture that. We will use this page to submit questions for the Q&A at the end of our session here. So please feel free to grab that QR code while it's up. I will show it a second time and have that ready in case you'd like to ask questions. All right. I think I'll get us started here. Thank you, everyone, for joining and making some time. Really excited about today's sessions and the two other presenters that we have with us and are lucky enough to have joined us today. So, as you may know, hopefully you know, the theme of today's webinar is the future of fraud prevention, which is broad and really interesting, and we'll drill into some more specific aspects of that topic. Probably most of you are familiar with Veriff. If not, we are a leader in the digital identity verification space. We've been around for almost a decade now, And we're a global company with offices all over the world, specializing in things like document fraud, biometrics, um, data source verifications. We've really been focused on Gen AI and deepfakes, for a long time, but specifically the past couple of years. And we're always looking at ways to provide you all with lots of knowledge, both on the kind of partner and customer side, as well as on the technical side and on the business side as well. And so going with today's theme, we're going to talk about and highlight how digital fraud is evolving, specifically alongside some of those technologies I mentioned, biometrics, deepfakes, generative AI, et cetera. It's becoming more sophisticated and difficult to detect. But of course, as that trends in that direction, our tooling also becomes more sophisticated and powerful. And it's kind of this tangential race that we're always in every hour of every day. And because our mission is to leverage cutting edge and new technology to combat these types of fraud, protect businesses and consumers, and keep the internet safe and make it safer every day. This is a really great topic for us to dive into. So we'll talk about AI innovations, biometric advancements. We'll hear from the perspective of one of our awesome customers as well. And we'll look beyond biometrics and Gen AI and all that good stuff, and towards the future as well. As I mentioned, we are on Slido for questions and answers. I will definitely leave some time at the end for that session. So as we go through my portion of the presentation, Gio's portion, and Dana's portion, both of whom I will introduce in just a moment, feel free to grab this QR code, maybe take a picture of it just in case. I'll bring it back up at the end as well if needed, and submit any questions you might have, and we'd be more than happy to talk about them. So let's introduce ourselves really quick. My name is Abe. I've worked at Veriff for almost 5 years now. Today I oversee our strategic and our gaming teams, and it's really fun and awesome and gratifying to engage with some of the largest companies in the world, help keep them safe, and also help give honest users and honest people access to the services they need every day. So it's been an awesome journey. With that, I'll pass it over to Dana.
Hi there, I'm Dana Endicott. I'm the Senior Vice President of Vantage Recreational Finance, and I'm a very proud Veriff customer. We are in the business of approving people's time off for recreational loans for boats and RVs, and I lead the strategic growth of the company, and I also take care of protecting the company, and that's where the partnership with Veriff comes in.
Awesome. Thank you, Dana. And Gio's joining us as well from the Veriff team.
Hey everyone, I'm Gio. I work in Veriff as a product manager. So my focus area in Veriff is around facial biometrics. So I work closely with our customers like Dana, and also partner with our GTM teams, which Abe is part of, to understand what is the needs and also continue research and improve our products. Also to make sure our products are future-proof. Yeah, happy to be here, and we'll share more about our product in the coming few minutes.
Awesome. Thank you both. Really excited to dig in. So we'll kind of sprinkle in a bunch of different perspectives from Dana as we go through the presentation, and Gio as well, who will actually have some slides to dive deeper into the technical aspects of what we're working on here at Veriff today and tomorrow and all the days following. So with that, let's dive into it. And as a reminder, any questions you have, please do put them in that Slido Q&A. So digital fraud is on the rise. I think we all know that. And our identity fraud report from this year showed a 20% rise, specifically 20% increase in fraud year over year between 2022 and 2023. So I think a lot of us have experienced this and have heard about it in the news. And this really underscores the need for not only advanced security measures, but innovative ones and ones that get ahead of the curve. Any fraudster that you encounter is likely a pretty intelligent person, and the tooling needs to account for that as well. Some of the driving factors in this increase? I think there are a lot. And I'd be interested to hear more in the Q&A if you have questions on those. Two that I would call out is just the increase in digital transactions post-pandemic. A lot of businesses, almost every single one, shifted online during that time, and that has not gone away. And almost everything we do, from kind of critical financial services to healthcare, securing a loan, potentially even applying for a job or recovering a password at work, all of that is done online, and a lot of those processes are new. So piggybacking on that, new processes mean new vulnerabilities in remote work environments, in digital infrastructures, and that's where we see fraudsters kind of aiming to exploit. There are a lot of industries that are maybe impacted in an outsized way, like e-commerce, finance, and healthcare, where we've seen really notable increases in digital fraud. And we have some really kind of pertinent examples, right? I know in the Veriff newsletter today, we talked about a deep fake, almost puppetry scam that was thwarted at Ferrari, where the CEO was I believe deep faked and in conversation with an employee, and that employee thankfully had the kind of acumen and experience, this executive, to notice something seems off here, asked that person, who was indeed a deep fake video on a conference call, a question that was personal and that he knew only that exact individual would know, and was able to thwart that deep fake. But that success story is kind of buried in a mountain of unsuccessful attempts to thwart phishing scams, deepfake attacks, puppetry, injections, etc. So I know we've all experienced this rise, and I know our customers definitely experience this on a daily basis alongside Veriff as well. And in that vein, Dana, I'm definitely curious to know, given this increasing complexity and overall volume of fraud, can you share a little bit from your perspective about how implementing Veriff's tools addressed the kind of evolving nature of these trends?
Absolutely. So we were in a situation where, like many other companies, the world has pivoted. And instead of walking into a local bank to apply for a loan with your friendly neighborhood banker, everybody's doing everything online. It's a great way to be able to get more competitive programs, et cetera. But in doing so, everything is collected electronically, and there's no human that you're looking in the eyes of. So it's a little trickier to confirm who you're working with is who they say they are. We all know that there are software programs that can make it very easy to fake documents that are required in a lending process, even titles for collateral. And when you get into the space we're in, we're not talking about cheap items. We're talking about some significant sums of money. And we had to come up with ways to verify the identity of the person at the other end of the transaction. And it has made a significant difference in just deploying Veriff and even telling people up front, you will go through an identity verification process, and suddenly people will disappear. So we know that even proactively telling them it's going to happen makes the fraudsters go away, because they're going to look for somebody that is not as technology forward in verifying who they're dealing with.
I think that's an excellent point, and something worth reinforcing. Just the threat of being held accountable sometimes is enough to mitigate a fraud attack, which is really important as well. It's also very important that we, of course, balance conversion for honest users with that, and make sure that if you are an honest person looking to secure a loan and get that new boat or RV or whatever it is, that we make that easy and painless while protecting the business. Dana, you did specifically mention identity fraud there. So identity fraud, as we all know, can encapsulate things like a fake document or maybe a synthetic identity. Are there any specific types of identity fraud that were most concerning for you?
Absolutely. People would, show us their driver's license, and it's so easy to fake a driver's license anymore. And Veriff is very adept at capturing when something has been altered, and it changes everything. documents that are related to collateral, documents related to proving insurance or proving an income. Those are all coming in fake as well. Harder to verify without getting on phones and calling. But when you have a government ID with, I think it's 185 different metrics to be measured, it's impossible to manually keep up with all those changes, but Veriff does it for us. So that way we know that we have that safety blanket of progressive technology to capture any alterations that have taken place.
It's great. I love that you had that number locked and loaded. That's awesome. Yes, I think it's important to recognize, we can think about things like a deep fake of a document, right? Deep fake doesn't necessarily just mean a person or a face. It can be pretty challenging to deep fake multiple hundreds of data elements that all have codependencies. And even if you can do that, there are still going to be anomalies. So it's a lot more than just a really nice looking picture of a fake document. Awesome. So as we continue to kind of look at the economic impact of the growth of fraud and fraud rates increasing, we also conducted an industry pulse survey, which alongside our identity survey and our general fraud survey was focused more on business impacts, revenue loss, sector-specific impacts, decision maker challenges, et cetera. That survey revealed that 90% of businesses in the past year or two faced revenue losses due to fraud, which can impact your bottom line pretty significantly and pretty immediately. 90% is a pretty big number, right? 9 out of 10 businesses. We probably all interact with more than 10 businesses every day, but let's call it 10. That means only one of those maybe hasn't impacted a fraud loss in the recent past or won't experience that in the near future. Thinking about maybe a fintech or a financial services company that's a public company, something like scrubbing lots of fake accounts or a data leak or something like that can immediately impact your stock price and thus your bottom line. So it is not only really impactful, but really important to be fast and be on top and ahead of these trends and of these growing threats. In terms of sector-specific impacts, we do see that financial services definitely has experienced an outsized impact when it comes to specifically identity theft and account takeovers. We also see that retail and e-commerce deal with payment fraud and kind of fake returns. A lot of the time, chargeback fraud, which makes sense too and has always been the case, but is certainly growing. I think my prediction would be in our next pulse survey, we're going to see a lot more action from the trust and safety arena. Places like social media, places like the sharing and the gig economy are starting to really focus on these trust and safety use cases, get ahead of the regulations we know are coming and evolving. And also just knowing that building trust with consumers and having a safe business is a huge asset to growing your company. And because of this, a lot of decision maker challenges ensue, staying ahead of fraudsters, investing in the right technologies to do that, looking at things like a multi-layered security approach that includes not just something like AI, but also machine learning and human expertise. Because while all three of those are critical, the confluence of all three is the most powerful tool that globally anyone can possibly have. So Dana, speaking of consumer trust, how has Veriff's platform impacted consumer perceptions and trust towards Vantage in your experience?
Based on the feedback that we've received from clients, they actually appreciate that we have them do an identity verification process. We were very new and one of the first companies to deploy it for the industry that we are in. And so it was new for the customers. And at first there were questions on, why am I doing this? How hard is this going to be? And when you walk them through something that is less than 2 minutes to complete and explain that By doing this, we're actually protecting you because now you know that the seller is who they say they are. And we have the sellers do it and explain, now you know who the buyers are, who they say they are. All of a sudden, the adoption rate skyrocketed. And it's a simple educational explanation. And we also say, this is the new way that business is going to be done, particularly for financial transactions online. And everyone really seems to be embracing it. I think it's going to be a much faster adoption rate than a lot of other technologies that have come out.
I agree. I definitely agree. And thank you for that. I had the same experience with global entry and some biometric processes like that, where I know there's a lot of fear out there, but making it easy and friendly and safe, as a consumer, I'm very appreciative of that. I also think it's important to call out this kind of pre-launch trend that at least we're definitely seeing on the go-to-market side of many businesses, and specifically Veriff. I think years ago it was kind of cool. We're starting a new company. Let's set it up. Let's run our beta. Let's do our proof of concept. Let's get a kind of critical mass. We'll raise some money. Then we'll think about compliance. Now it's like it's more along the lines of, well, let's have a safe and secure platform that kind of puts trust and safety first and foremost, and that will make our kind of user adoption explode. And that trend is certainly kind of elevating every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Along the lines of bottom line impact as well is, of course, return on investment. And I think specifically in the identity verification space, over the kind of first half of the past decade, it was pretty challenging for a lot of businesses to measure the quantifiable impact of a tool like Veriff on their business. You can do it indirectly, maybe more monthly active users, lower fraud rates, but there's so many intricacies and smaller metrics, smaller in terms of kind of fame and notability, not importance, that go into a proper ROI calculation. And we obviously want to give our prospects, our customers, our partners the opportunity to calculate their own ROI, even if it's with another platform or another tool. We've got a great ROI calculator on our website here, which you can see an animation of, but feel free to check that out on the Veriff website. It's really insightful, and at the least, it will maybe show you how to improve your own internal models and the way you calculate ROI in the realm of identity and specifically fraud as well. Dana, I'd love to hear kind of your description of the ROI Vantage has realized based on implementing Veriff and how the solutions that we've partnered on together have contributed to things like cost savings or revenue growth.
Okay, I'm just going to flat out tell you it's over 1,000% ROI for us. I looked at the numbers of what we invested for 2023 with our services with Veriff, and I measured that against how much it stopped in fraud. And it was actually 1,153% return on investment. It's
Pretty
a no-brainer.
That is pretty good, in the words of one of my favorite actors. So that's awesome. Thank you for bringing that number with you. And we'll talk a bit more about ROI at the end as well, with an awesome quote from Vantage and some specific numbers. But great to hear that. Thank you for sharing it. And now we move kind of more into the more biometrics specific part of our session today, and we'll bring in Gio and talk more about kind of the tooling and technology behind fraud mitigation. To set that up, looking back at our fraud index survey that we discussed earlier, we did see that just under 40% of the folks that responded to that survey see biometrics as the most secure identity verification method, which is really interesting in that I think that mindset has changed in the consumer arena pretty quickly. I think folks saw it as a lot scarier a few years ago and potentially less accurate. But now that we have a variety of biometric methods available, like facial recognition, voice recognition, fingerprints, and even within facial recognition, you have different kind of tiers and ways to use that technology, a liveness check, a face match, 1-to-1, 1-to-N, etc. Different sources, different types of validation. They all kind of have respective advantages, but the one common theme is that they're fast, they're easy, and they're secure. And that is really the key of the future of fraud prevention. Biometrics specifically, which Gio will talk about, have some distinct advantages as compared to other fraud deterrent technologies. Like I mentioned, kind of a really strong balance between UX and security, reducing friction while enhancing security and accuracy, and also fraud reduction. It's a lot easier in some cases to come by a fake document than to impersonate someone's entire face and likeness. So biometrics are really fascinating. And with that, I want to bring in Gio Jolly, who leads the charge on biometrics here at Veriff, who's going to talk about what we're seeing, what we're working on, and how we see the future. Over to you, Gio.
Yeah, thanks, Abe. So yeah, as you mentioned, I think biometrics is a very key element in identity verification. And one of the other, apart from customer onboarding that we primarily support, what we see in the market is customers also need a better solution for authentication. So that is, once someone is onboarded, they want to verify is it the same person or not. So we went to see what our customer wants when it comes to authentication, and there were two main challenges that our customers and what industry is asking us. So the first one is around user experience. Many of the people that we spoke to, they were using traditional multi-factor authentication process, which is either by sending an SMS, you get a code via an email, or it could be by using a third-party application like a one-time password generated that is by Google or Microsoft. So the amount of friction that it is creating for their users was quite high. So they wanted to the customers and the market actually need a better solution when it comes to user experience. They were very keen on leveraging something that is much better when it comes to user experience. And you can see that the stats doesn't lie here. That is around 56% of the users were abandoning two-factor authentication process. So that is one area where we saw that biometrics can bring a lot of value, especially in terms of continuous authentication and verification. In addition to that, I think we all know, like in today's world, Gen AI is a threat. There are solutions that claim to prevent Gen AI, but many in the market are worried about what is going to be the future, right? With all the evolving technologies, how can we prevent, how can we be proactive, and how we can build a solution and a system that is resilient to all these attacks. So these were the two concerns and the main areas that we wanted to address when we are building our biometric authentication solution. So in Veriff, the biometric authentication solution primarily focuses on user experience. So the user experience is very inclusive. Anyone in the world can do it. It's a simple selfie, and we do the analysis in the background. We give out the decision to our customers. So the end user is not going through any other steps, like they don't want to go into like an email or a third-party app or download and enter an SMS. So the simple selfie-based authentication is giving that user experience to our end users. In addition to that, it is also inclusive for any age demographics. We have customers who are very young, but also customers who are not technically very savvy. So for those customers as well, it is very simple to do a selfie and get a decision and onboard and verify they are the person who they claim to be, and do the interaction with different products in the internet. So moving on, I think how we do that is we say that there is only one step, but under the hood, we try to look into different aspects of that behavior. So which is important. So to make an accurate decision, we need data. And many times, many of the products in the market, they forcefully ask the end users to give the data with consent. And many times users have to go through a lot of steps to give that data. But on our end, what we are doing is we capture a selfie, but with our SDK, we are also able to understand different risks associated with that session. So we generally look into three types of risks. Apart from biometric risk, we also look into behavioral risks, whether the session has any anomalous behavior, is it linked to any fraud sessions or a fraud pattern that we are seeing? So Veriff has that knowledge, and we can leverage that behavioral patterns in the decision making. In addition to that, we also look the device data of the user. So have the device be something like a stolen device, or we have seen any fraud from the same device coming before. So all this information help us to understand the authenticity of that device and the user. In addition to that, network is a very important aspect as well for us. Where is the session accessed from? Do we change? Many times fraudsters switch their networks. They use VPNs. Sometimes they start their session from a country, and then all of a sudden they are doing the session from a different country. So we are able to notice this behavioral change in networks as well. So all these factors, along with any risk associated with facial biometrics, like if it's a deep fake or if it's not live or not, will help us to make a better decision making to verify that person purely based on biometrics. So in the end, our customers receive a very simple decision, approve or decline. And based on that, they can decide in their workflow what to do next with this particular user.
Great, thank you, Gio. Awesome overview, and it's been really exciting to see this technology grow alongside both fraud trends and the patterns we see, but also what our customers see as well, using this kind of baseline technology to look at things like liveness, like I mentioned, that one-to-end matching, and kind of tangential versions of this core stack that we can use for lots of different use cases and businesses, and most importantly, types of fraud. So thank you for that overview, Gio. Dana, I know we kind of discussed the ROI that Vantage has seen already, but maybe you could offer kind of any insights you have on how biometrics specifically have contributed to this.
Well, as I said earlier, biometrics are definitely the way of the future, and it is a way for us to stop the fraudsters in their tracks, because they are getting really good at faking the documentation. I mean, even starting to get some of those holograms that come off of government documents, but you can't fake your face. So when they go through that process, the biometric scan of confirming that it's a live person, it's not an AI image, and that it's matching the documentation that's been scanned on all those checkpoints has absolutely changed the game. It scares off the new guys, and it stops the ones that just, give it a go, so to speak, to see if they can get it through. It protects our company, and it protects the people that are engaged in a transaction, because if they were to get through without that biometric confirmation of who we're doing business with, we not only get hurt, but the other person in that transaction is also getting hurt, and they have to be stopped.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's an important point, is that businesses can get hurt, and ROI is really important, but there's usually someone else on the other end of that fraudulent transaction, not the fraudster, but the victim, especially with things like synthetic and theft. As we wrap up here, go to kind of takeaways and predictions, and then look at some of those questions, and thank you all for submitting them. Dana, is there anything you'd like to wrap up just in the realm of, how things like biometric technology or kind of Gen AI fraud tooling in general, how this is translated to any kind of competitive advantages for you?
Oh, I absolutely believe it has. We were the first to market with this implemented and deployed. Our incredible development team was able to use the API that Veriff makes available to work with our platform. So it's seamless for our team to deploy the Veriff solution. It protects our company. It is, I've said this before, this is the cheapest insurance policy you can have to protect your business against the wrongdoers. And we have such belief in, and we sleep better at night because we know the Veriff team is getting ahead of that next generation of, I guess, biometric fraud, getting ahead of the deep fakes and addressing what's happening with AI so that we don't have to worry about, wow, how do we stay ahead of it? That partnership, we know you guys are on it, and it's going to continue to protect our company moving forward. We are very vocal proponents to protect our industry. So we openly share with all companies, especially other lenders in the marine and recreational space, to deploy this. Because if we don't collectively work together, the whole industry will suffer, all businesses will suffer, and then you can't do the transactions anymore. And that's just not the way that the global economy is going to continue to chug along.
Yeah, great point. And I think we see that on our side as well, right? The anti-fraud tooling space is incredibly saturated and very competitive, but at the end of the day, we are all fighting the same enemy. And looking to protect the same people. And so sharing data, working together, and being collaborative is a big part of the future and really exciting and important. So let's maybe each of us give kind of our 30 seconds of key takeaways and predictions, and then we'll move into some of those questions. Gio, do you want to kick us off here?
Yeah, sure. I think we are already seeing a trend of how deepfakes is rapidly increasing and how the attacks are getting more sophisticated. So on our end, it is very important to be very proactive. And as we always are with our internal fraud prevention teams and detections and ongoing improvements we are doing. So that's extremely important. And as I emphasized just before, it's also important. It's not just the image, it's also that multi-layered approach. And we need to also have that comprehensive strategy to gather more data and inherently and help us to make better decision making. So I think these are the two main takeaways from my side.
Nice. Dana, what about you?
Key takeaways for us are that fraudsters are going to continue to advance in their skill set, and AI is changing the game. It can be used for good or it can be used for bad. And I predict that Veriff is definitely going to stay ahead of that curve and keep us all safe, and that it really is a collaboration. We all have to help each other get educated on the options that are out there and use the subject matter experts as our best defense.
Totally agree. I think from my side, the key takeaways and predictions I've been thinking about recently, one of which I've touched on, which is balancing the honest users and not forgetting about them. I think when we're fighting fraud, and especially when we're experiencing it, it's very easy to be laser focused on that defense and that mitigation, and that is important. But oftentimes erroneously declining or rejecting an honest user is far more expensive than missing a case of fraud. Now, we never want to do either, but we want to specifically not forget the honest user. And like Gio said, our biometric authentication, tooling is really conversion and UX driven. And that's really important to keep in mind. Secondly, something I think we should touch on is regulatory changes and that environment. The regulatory environment when it comes to online safety, when it comes to identity, and when it comes to certainly AI and fraud as well, is ever evolving, is always impacting fraud prevention strategies in different ways, and certainly will impact the technology that we use to build the tooling as well. Things like stricter data protection laws and requirements for IDV. We see the new directives in the EU for AML as well, which focus highly on kind of high-risk individuals and being able to screen large numbers of people, but really focus in on those high-risk individuals. And then we see frameworks like COSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, which is really, really important. And that's going to be really interesting to see which companies are ahead of that. Many are like Epic Games, and which companies kind of need to catch up and how that impacts their business. But hopefully, most people around the world are aligned on protecting the kids, because that's very important. And the ways that we can do that while respecting the privacy of everyone, including folks who are underage. So thank you both so much for all of your contributions here. Let's look at some questions from the Slido. I saw one, Gio, that I think would be really interesting for you to touch on, which is within the realm of biometric authentication and that technology in general. How do we use and think about VPN data or proxy detection?
Yeah, that's a good point. So this falls under the network aspect that I've been mentioning. So we have, when we say network is a broad term, it does include detecting if it's an emulator or they are using any VPNs. So that is one signal that is used in our decision making. So yeah, network is a broader term, and there are many signals, which includes VPN as well. I hope that answers the question there.
For sure, for sure. Maybe another more UX focused question for you, another good one. Conversion is very important here. And something I found really interesting when I first started in this space is the demographics of end users. And perhaps, Dana, this is something you've experienced at Vantage as well. Looking at a business like a crypto app versus a lender. Those end users are going to have a wide variance of familiarity and experience with completing an identity verification or even the concept of a biometric authentication. And even if you have the best UX and the highest converting system out there, technical troubleshooting can still be challenging, and folks can still hit snags, and it totally makes sense. And we want to make that process as easy as possible, especially for those honest users. Things like permissions and browsers obviously play a role for mainly first-time users as well. I'm curious to hear both of your perspectives on kind of the future of support and maybe interactive assistance in this realm, which is something we don't always think about. Maybe Dana, you can talk about kind of the customer experiences that you've seen and what you think are the most effective ways to help people through the process. And then Gio, you could speak on kind of how we would implement that and how we think about our UX and our flow and kind of scientifically proof and test it to make it the best it can be.
Well, admittedly, we don't have too many situations where people have a challenge completing the Veriff. There are times where it's typically user error, unfortunately, where Veriff has provided some well-written guidelines when they are experiencing specific issues on the different models of cell phones or different platforms. And we are instantly able to either coach them through that verbally if we're engaged with the client, or to provide an email with illustrations so that they can adjust settings, make sure apps are closed. And I would say 99 out of 100 times, they're able to just address whatever the outlying issue was and complete the process. I would say maybe 1 in 1,000, actually. Someone just couldn't get it to work, and it was a situation where they probably weren't technically adept enough to answer the questions we were asking, because maybe it was someone not as technology forward or active in using smartphones, which is not a problem. We have workarounds for those things. So the only thing that could make it even easier is if there's, a live little chat box where somebody can, from their own phone, say, help, I can't make it work. But I'm not sure how you would do that, but that's where Gio comes in.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. I think at Veriff, we already do think about how to ensure that user experience is there. So what we already do is we do give some feedback when they're taking that selfie already. So we tell them if the writing is correct, or they could adjust their positions a little bit better. So that feedback already keeps that, ongoing real-time journey, and making sure that this identity verification process is faster. And there is more improvements we can, of course, do there to understand based on their demographics or the age. Maybe that feedback could be more verbose. And that's where I think future of AI comes in, where things can get more adaptive. But yeah, I think right now we are very much invested in that user experience journey where we can give real-time feedback so that the customer doesn't have to leave the verification session. They can continue doing that verification session with us without going into any other steps. So that's the approach we are taking right now. And I think it's working, and we want to continue doing that.
Definitely. That's great. Thank you both. I see one here that I'll take, which is a really good question around chargebacks. Around the situation. So a chargeback is maybe you buy something on Amazon and then you just say, oh, it's defective, it doesn't work, even though that's not the truth, and you get a refund and then you get a free product. So that is certainly a type of fraud. Now, it's not always directly related to identity, but identity verification is likely a part of the process that person went through at some point. And so the question revolves around, let's say someone goes through Veriff or a system like it, does a document verification and a selfie, or even just a document verification, then executes a chargeback. And now the onus is on kind of the business that experienced that chargeback, potentially even the payment service provider, and the credit card company or the bank as well. So the question there is kind of what documentation is available to kind of provide from the business who's experiencing that type of fraud to the credit card company in order to settle that kind of dispute. I think it's a really interesting question. And at least in our experience, we want to provide our partners with a wealth of documentation. Oftentimes, we even see ourselves as more than anything a data provider. We're ingesting as much information as we can. We are analyzing and validating and scrutinizing as much of it as we can. And then we're sending every single possible data point we can back to our customers because at the end of the day, it's your data, and we want you to have the most detailed view of that person and your ecosystem possible. So, if someone does execute a chargeback, but they've already done a document verification, especially if you're working in conjunction with a Stripe or a PayPal, and maybe they facilitated that payment outside of the document verification, there's a wealth of data you can put together to say, hey, okay, we have a passport from this person, we have a selfie from this person. They also went through probably some kind of bank account verification through that payment layer. If all of this data is matching up and the credit card is legit, the document's legit, the bank account's legit, and the identity is confirmed, you have a wealth of signals there to then go to a credit card company and say, hey, we're pretty sure this is a chargeback fraud, and here's why that is. But I think that's a really interesting question in kind of the future of data enrichment and trusted sources, which are growing in prevalence and are going to become more and more important in the realm of KYC, biometrics, and identity verification as well. We have one last question, which I'll open up to both of you. It's actually two questions, but I'm going to combine it into one, and I think it's a good way to wrap us up here. So first part of the question is, how do we future-proof against evolving AI attacks, which is a broad but very important question. And what do the future of kind of onboarding and specifically continuous authentication look like? I mentioned those EU AML directives. Ongoing authentication and continuous monitoring is a big part of that, and that's going to extend to certainly other realms of identity regulation as well. So how do we future-proof against evolving AI attacks, and kind of how does that play into the future of continuous authentication and onboarding in general? Maybe Gio, you can start us off.
Yeah, sure. I think currently, I think it's important also to understand Veriff already does detect AI-based attacks, synthetic attacks. So I think one way we do it is to look into that inconsistencies in AI generated or synthetic media. Usually when you look into like pixel by pixel, you can see that AI is good, but it's not good enough to maintain that consistency you can get in a selfie image. But in the future, it might be there. So what we also do is Veriff identity verification product is a video-based product. So it's not just image, we are a video-based. So we have more than 2 images to work with. We have a video where we can understand better about what is the user and what is their facial geometry like, which is quite even more harder to synthetically generate. So this is what we believe, where we have to be more proactive and leveraging more data with videos, and that is one way we see that how we will be going in the next, let's say, next couple of years going forward. I think in addition to that, only thing I want to add is also reiterating on that point of multi-layered approach. So it's not just biometrics as well. It is also important to look into other signals that you can have, which could be network device or where is a session done from. So all this data could help us to make that better understanding of who the user is, what is their behavior, and give that trustworthy risk-based decision to our customers.
Great. Dana, any kind of final and parting thoughts from you on maybe specifically AI or onboarding, or how you think about that continuous monitoring? Maybe you re-verify folks if they need to refinance or something like that. How is Vantage thinking about these parts of the future?
Verification is not an option in any transaction that's taking place. And I love the things that Gio was saying and about the progression of how it's going to continue to develop. Even just an idea off the top of my head is have to answer live questions. It might flash a color on a screen and you have to say what color you saw or a number or something. But the right answer is more and more businesses just need to deploy this. They need to use the identity verification to protect everyone, from the fraudsters and to stop them. And as AI continues to develop, it is the safety net for all companies to protect their revenues.
Totally agree. And with that, we will wrap everything up here. I want to thank Dana so much for taking the time to join us and talk about her experience using Veriff. So Dana, thank you very much for being a part of this webinar.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having us on.
Of course. And Gio, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. Thank you first and foremost for being one of our leading internal experts and leading the charge in terms of building awesome products and functionalities that make the internet a safer place. And thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, pleasure. Thanks, Abe, for hosting and moderating the session as well. Appreciate your work here.
Anytime. And thank you to everyone who attended. We hope it was useful. Any suggestions, feedback, follow-up questions, etc., feel free to hit us up on our website via email. You know what to do. And we're always happy to talk more about the future of fraud. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.